You always do this, don't you? Can't even handle a simple family dinner without falling apart.
The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and every head at the table snapped toward me. My mother-in-law's mouth hung open mid-sentence. My husband's smug grin froze on his face. I stood there, trembling, holding the folder that would destroy everything he'd built. "You want to know what's really funny, Trevor?" My voice came out steady, cold. "The joke's been on all of you." Trevor's face went pale. His sister Claudia stopped laughing. Even his father, the great Preston Vaughan who never looked up from his phone, was staring at me now. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, but I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not after 3 years of being their punching bag. "Sweetheart, put that down," Trevor said through clenched teeth, his eyes darting between me and his family. "You're embarrassing yourself." That word. Embarrassing. The same word he'd used when I wore the wrong dress to his work party. When I pronounced a French restaurant name wrong. When I accidentally spilled water at last year's Christmas dinner and his mother called me clumsy for 20 minutes straight while everyone laughed. But I wasn't the embarrassment anymore. He was about to be. Embarrassing. I laughed, and it sounded strange even to my own ears. "Let me tell you what's embarrassing, Trevor. What's embarrassing is that while you've been making jokes about my teaching salary in front of your family, you've been stealing from your own father's company." The room went silent. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Preston's face turned red. Trevor's mother gasped, her hand flying to her pearl necklace like she was in some old movie. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story." I opened the folder. My hands were shaking, but I kept going. $53,000. That's how much you've embezzled over the past 8 months. Want to see the bank statements? The fake invoices? I have copies of everything. Trevor lunged toward me, but his brother Nash grabbed his arm. "You went through my private files?" Trevor's voice cracked. "You had no right." "No right." I cut him off. "I had no right? You've spent 3 years treating me like garbage in front of these people, and I had no right to find out the truth about who I married." My voice was rising now, all the anger I'd swallowed down finally erupting. "Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every family barbecue, you've made me the punchline. My clothes weren't expensive enough. My job wasn't impressive enough. My family wasn't good enough. Well, guess what, Trevor? Your family isn't as perfect as you all pretend to be." Claudia stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood. "This is insane. Trevor would never." I threw the papers onto the table, and they scattered across the expensive china and crystal glasses. Bank statements with his signatures. Emails to fake vendors. Transfer records that didn't match the company books. Preston grabbed one of the papers, his reading glasses sliding down his nose as he scanned it. His face changed. That's when I knew he saw it. The truth. "Where did you get these?" Preston's voice was quiet, dangerous. Trevor opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at his father, then at me, then back at his father. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Dad, I can explain." But Preston held up his hand, silencing him. The mighty Trevor Vaughan, the golden boy who could do no wrong, finally had nothing to say. I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to walk toward the door. "Goodbye, Trevor. My lawyer will be in touch." His mother found her voice then. "You can't just leave. We need to discuss this like adults." I turned back one last time. "Like adults? Mrs. Vaughan, you spent the last 3 years calling me simple and common to my face. Your son humiliated me every chance he got while you all sat there and laughed. There's nothing left to discuss." The front door felt heavy when I pushed it open. The cool October air hit my face, and I realized I was crying. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt almost like relief. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. Through the dining room window, I could see them all standing around the table, arguing. Trevor was gesturing wildly. His father was yelling. Good. I started the engine, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. 3 years. 3 years of swallowing insults. 3 years of fake smiles and silent car rides home where Trevor would tell me I was overreacting, too sensitive, couldn't take a joke. 3 years of feeling small. But finding those bank statements 2 months ago had changed everything. It gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. Power. My phone buzzed. 8 missed calls from Trevor already. I turned it off and drove away from that house, from that family, from that life. The streetlights blurred past my window, and I thought about how I'd ended up here, in this moment, finally fighting back. It hadn't started this way. Once upon a time, I'd actually loved him. Once upon a time, I'd thought I was lucky. That felt like a different lifetime now. A different version of me who didn't know what I was walking into. Who didn't know that love could turn into something cold and cruel when you weren't looking. Who didn't know that sometimes the person who promises to protect you becomes the one you need protection from. But I knew now. And I was never going back. The question that kept circling my mind as I drove through the dark streets wasn't whether I'd done the right thing. It was something else entirely. Something that made my stomach twist with a mix of fear and satisfaction. Because exposing Trevor's theft wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. And what I hadn't told them yet, what I was saving for the divorce proceedings, was so much worse than anything they'd seen tonight. 4 years ago, I met Trevor Vaughn at a charity fundraiser I'd been dragged to by my college roommate. I was 26, teaching 5th grade at an underfunded public school, wearing a dress I'd bought on clearance. He was 29, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. "You look bored," he'd said, handing me a glass of champagne. I laughed because it was true. Is it that obvious? He leaned against the bar, and I noticed his eyes were green. Really green. I've been to 100 of these things. I can always spot someone who'd rather be anywhere else. We talked for 2 hours. He was charming, funny, self-deprecating in a way that felt genuine. He asked about my students, seemed genuinely interested when I told him about the kid who'd finally learned to read chapter books after struggling all year. When he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. My roommate squealed in the Uber home. "Do you know who that is? His family owns half the commercial real estate downtown." I didn't care about his money. I cared about the way he'd listened when I talked, the way he'd made me feel interesting and worth paying attention to. That should have been my first clue that something was off. When someone seems too good to be true, they usually are. Our first date was at an Italian restaurant so fancy I had to Google the menu beforehand. Trevor ordered for both of us without asking, which I found romantic at the time. Protective. Now I see it differently. Now I see it as the first sign of someone who needed control. But back then, I was floating. He texted me good morning every day. Sent flowers to my classroom. Showed up at my apartment with takeout when I mentioned I was too tired to cook. 6 months in, he took me to meet his family. That's when things started to shift. His mother looked me up and down when we walked into their house. And I do mean house, not home, because that place felt like a museum. Cold. Perfect. Untouchable. "So you're a teacher," she'd said, making it sound like I'd admitted to something shameful. How noble. Trevor had laughed, squeezing my hand. "Mom thinks everyone should be in business. Don't take it personally." But it felt personal. Especially when his sister Claudia asked where I'd gone to college and wrinkled her nose at my answer. When his father barely looked up from his scotch to acknowledge I existed. When his brother Nash made a joke about public school teachers and those who can't teach while everyone chuckled. Trevor didn't defend me. He just smiled and changed the subject. On the drive home, I'd been quiet. "They liked you," Trevor said, which felt like a lie. "Your mom called my job noble like it was an insult." He'd sighed, that patient sigh I'd come to know so well. "She's just protective. She'll warm up to you." She never did. Neither did the rest of them. But by then, I was in too deep. Trevor proposed 8 months later, on a beach in Hawaii, with a ring so big I was almost embarrassed to wear it. My friends were thrilled. My parents were cautiously happy. My mother pulled me aside at the engagement party and asked if I was sure. He seems. I don't know, honey. Just make sure this is what you want. I'd brushed her off. What did she know? She'd never had someone like Trevor. Someone successful and handsome who chose me out of everyone he could have had. I felt lucky. Special. Chosen. The wedding was at the Vaughn family estate, planned entirely by Trevor's mother. My opinions were noted and ignored. The dress she picked out for me wasn't my style. The flowers weren't my favorite. Even the cake flavor was what Trevor's family preferred. It's just easier this way, Trevor said when I tried to push back. Mom knows all the best vendors. Trust me. So I did. I trusted him. I smiled in all the photos, danced at the reception, promised to love and honor him forever. The honeymoon was perfect. 2 weeks in Greece, just us, away from his family and their judgment. He was the Trevor I'd fallen for again. Attentive, loving, making me laugh until my sides hurt. I thought maybe marriage would be different. Maybe once we had our own home, our own life, things would go back to how they were. I was wrong. The first Sunday dinner back from the honeymoon, his mother commented on my weight. Marriage must be treating you well, she'd said, eyeing my hips. You're glowing. And filling out. Claudia had snickered. Trevor's father hadn't even looked up from carving the roast. And Trevor? Trevor had just smiled and said, she does look good, doesn't she? Like his mother's comment was a compliment. That night, I cried in our bathroom while he slept. I told myself I was being too sensitive. They were his family. I needed to try harder to fit in. So I did. I tried so hard. I bought more expensive clothes even though they maxed out my credit card. I learned to cook the meals his mother made. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I smiled when they criticized everything from my hair to my career to the way I set a table. And slowly, piece by piece, I felt myself shrinking. Becoming smaller. Quieter. Less. The worst part? Trevor started joining in. At first it was small things. A comment about my outfit before we left for dinner. A joke about my adorable public school salary. Then it grew. He'd mock my students' names in front of his family, imitating the way I talked about them. He'd tell stories about me that were designed to make me look foolish. And they'd all laugh. Every single time, they'd laugh. 2 years into the marriage, I barely recognized myself. I'd stopped calling my friends because I was embarrassed to admit how miserable I was. I avoided my parents because I couldn't stand the worry in their eyes. I went to work, came home, attended Sunday dinners, and repeated the cycle. I felt trapped in a life I'd chosen but no longer wanted. Then came last Thanksgiving. The night everything finally broke. Thanksgiving dinner at the Vaughn house was always an ordeal, but last year was different. Worse. They'd invited extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, which meant more people to witness my humiliation. I'd spent 3 days making a sweet potato casserole from scratch, using a recipe I'd found in Trevor's grandmother's cookbook. I thought maybe if I made something meaningful, something connected to their family history, they'd appreciate it. Trevor's mother took one look at the dish and frowned. Oh, you made that? Not thank you. Not how thoughtful. Just disappointment dripping from 3 words. I set it on the sideboard with all the other food, my cheeks burning. Claudia was already holding court in the living room, talking about her recent promotion at some tech startup. Nash was showing off photos from his trip to Dubai. And I stood there in my clearance rack dress, feeling invisible. Dinner started fine. I kept my head down, ate quietly, answered questions when directly asked. Then Trevor's cousin Marcus made a comment about teachers getting summers off. Must be nice to work 9 months a year and complain about being tired, he said, laughing. Trevor jumped right in. Oh, you should hear Ivy complain after parent-teacher conferences. You'd think she ran a marathon. The table erupted in laughter. I stared at my plate, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. He'd complained to them about me. Shared private conversations we'd had in our bedroom, vulnerable moments when I'd admitted how exhausting my job could be. Now it was entertainment. Trevor's mother chimed in next. Well, teaching is a young person's job anyway. Once you have children, Ivy, you'll need to focus on being a proper mother. Not spreading yourself too thin with work. I love my job, I said quietly. Too quietly. Nobody heard me. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. The conversation moved on, flowing around me like I wasn't even there. I excused myself to use the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red. When had I started looking so tired? So defeated? I splashed cold water on my face and told myself to get through the rest of dinner. Just a few more hours. When I came back, they were eating dessert. Nobody had waited. My sweet potato casserole sat untouched on the sideboard while everyone ate the pies Trevor's mother had ordered from some expensive bakery. Trevor saw me looking and shrugged. No one really likes sweet potato casserole, babe. It's kind of an acquired taste. More laughter. Always more laughter at my expense. The drive home was silent. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur past. Trevor was on his phone, texting someone, probably Nash or Claudia, probably continuing to joke about me. You're being moody, he said without looking up. I'm tired, I replied. You're always tired. Maybe my mom's right. Maybe teaching is too much for you. I turned to look at him then, really look at him. Do you even like me anymore? He finally put his phone down, surprised by the question. What kind of question is that? Of course I do. I married you, didn't I? But that wasn't an answer. That was a deflection. I pressed on. Then why do you let them treat me like that? Why do you join in? He sighed, that condescending sigh I hated. They're just teasing, Ivy. You take everything so seriously. You need to lighten up. Lighten up. As if years of constant criticism and mockery were just harmless fun. As if my feelings didn't matter. As if I was the problem for being hurt. We got home, and he went straight to his office to work. I sat in our bedroom, staring at nothing, feeling something crack inside my chest. This wasn't marriage. This wasn't love. This was slow-motion destruction, and I'd been letting it happen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs to make tea and saw light coming from under Trevor's office door. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just wanted to tell him I was going to bed. But when I pushed the door open, his computer screen was facing me. Bank statements. Spreadsheets. Numbers that didn't make sense. He slammed the laptop shut so fast he almost knocked over his coffee. Jesus, Ivy. Don't you knock. His reaction was extreme. Defensive. Scared. I'm working on sensitive company files. You can't just barge in here. But I'd seen enough. Something in those numbers looked wrong. Off. And the way he was acting, panicked and angry, made my instincts scream that something wasn't right. I apologized and left, but my mind was racing. The next morning, Trevor left early for a golf game with Nash. I told myself not to. Told myself it was wrong, an invasion of privacy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he was hiding. Something bigger than just being a bad husband. I went into his office. His laptop was password protected, but I knew the password. Our anniversary date, because he wasn't creative. My hands shook as I typed it in. What I found made my blood run cold. Fake vendor invoices. Payments to companies that didn't exist. Money being siphoned from his father's commercial real estate business into a private account. $53,000 over 8 months. Trevor wasn't just a cruel husband. He was a thief. And he'd been stealing from his own family while they all sat around mocking me for being a simple teacher with a simple job. I sat there for an hour, just staring at the screen, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend I'd never seen it. But a bigger part, the part of me that was tired of being small and silent, knew exactly what I had to do. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Downloaded files to a thumb drive. Covered my tracks as best I could. Then I called my friend Rochelle, the only person I'd stayed close with. I need a lawyer, I told her when she answered. A good one. For divorce. Rochelle didn't ask questions right away. She just said, finally, I'll text you a name. That afternoon, I met with Deirdre Morrison, a divorce attorney with a reputation for being ruthless. I showed her everything. The bank statements, the fake invoices, all of it. She looked at me with something like respect. This changes everything. With this evidence, you'll get exactly what you deserve in the divorce. But I didn't just want a fair divorce settlement. I wanted them to know. All of them. His perfect family who'd spent years making me feel worthless while their golden boy was stealing right under their noses. I wanted them to see him for what he really was. Deirdre warned me that public confrontation could backfire. The smart play is to use this leverage quietly in negotiations. Smart maybe, but not satisfying. I'd been smart for 3 years. Quiet. Accommodating. Swallowing every insult with a smile. Where had that gotten me? Miserable, small, and invisible. No. This time, I was going to make noise. This time, they were all going to see exactly who Trevor Vaughn really was. And that's how I ended up standing in his mother's dining room with a folder full of evidence and a wine glass in my hand, ready to burn his world down. The planning took 2 months. 2 months of pretending everything was normal while I prepared my exit. 2 months of Sunday dinners where I smiled and nodded while they mocked me. 2 months of sleeping next to a man I no longer loved, maybe never really loved. And the whole time, I felt something growing inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Determination. The knowledge that I deserved better and I was finally going to take it. After that night, after I walked out of the Vaughn house with their shocked faces burned into my memory, I drove to Rochelle's apartment. She opened the door in pajamas, took one look at me, and pulled me inside. I did it, I said, and then I started laughing. Couldn't stop. Rochelle made me sit down, brought me water, waited until the hysterical laughter turned into crying. Tell me everything. So I did. Every detail. The shattered wine glass, the folder, Preston's face when he saw the bank statements, Trevor's pathetic attempts to explain. Rochelle listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Those words broke something loose inside me. When was the last time anyone had said they were proud of me? I stayed at Rochelle's that night. Didn't sleep much. Kept checking my phone even though I'd turned it off. Around 3 in the morning, I turned it back on. 47 missed calls. Dozens of texts. From Trevor, from his mother, from Claudia. Even one from Nash that just said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. The next morning, Monday, I called in sick to work. Couldn't face a classroom full of 10-year-olds when my entire life was imploding. Instead, I met with Deirdre again. She'd already heard from Trevor's lawyer. He wants to talk, she said. Claims it's all a misunderstanding. Classic. I shook my head. No talking. File the divorce papers. Today. She smiled, sharp as a knife. Already drafted. Just need your signature. Signing those papers felt surreal. My hand moved across the page, but it didn't feel like me doing it. Like I was watching someone else end their marriage. Deirdre said they'd be served to Trevor at his office that afternoon. Maximum impact, she said with satisfaction. I tried to feel guilty about that, about humiliating him at work. But I couldn't. Not after years of being humiliated everywhere we went. That afternoon, I went back to the house. Our house, though it never really felt like mine, while Trevor was at work. I packed everything I cared about. Clothes, books, photos of my family. Left behind the expensive jewelry he'd given me, the designer handbags his mother had picked out. None of it felt like mine anyway. I was loading the last box into my car when a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Preston. He got out slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Ivy, can we talk? Every instinct screamed at me to get in my car and drive away. But something made me stay. What do you want? He ran a hand through his gray hair. To apologize. And to thank you. That threw me. Thank me. He nodded, looking at the house instead of at me. I've suspected something was off with the company books for months. Couldn't prove it. You handed me the proof. So you believe me? It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. Every word. I've spent the last 24 hours with my accountant. It's worse than you showed us. The 53,000 is just what you found. There's more. My stomach dropped. How much more? Preston's jaw tightened. Over 200,000. Different accounts, different schemes. My son is a thief and a liar. And I was too proud of him to see it. We stood there in uncomfortable silence. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for Preston, who'd built a business his son was destroying. Sad for myself, for the years I'd wasted. Even a little sad for Trevor, who'd thrown away everything for money he didn't even need. I'm sorry, I said finally. For all of this. Preston looked at me then, really looked at me. Don't apologize. You did what I should have done. You told the truth. He left after that, and I finished loading my car. Drove away from that house for the last time without looking back. I'd rented a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No one to criticize my decorating choices or tell me the furniture was too cheap. Just mine. That first night, I ordered pizza, sat on the floor because my furniture wouldn't be delivered until tomorrow, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next few days were a blur. Trevor tried to call constantly. His mother left voicemails that started apologetic and turned accusatory. Claudia sent a long text about how I'd destroyed their family. Nash sent nothing, which somehow felt worse. I ignored all of it. Focused on moving in, on getting back to work, on rebuilding the life I'd let crumble. My students were happy to see me. We missed you, Ms. Ivy. One little girl hugged my waist. Are you feeling better? Better. Was I? I thought about it while they worked on their math worksheets. My marriage was over. I'd burned bridges with people who'd never liked me anyway. I was living in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture. But yeah, I was better. Better than I'd been in 3 years. Better than I'd been since the first time Trevor let his family mock me and I let it slide. Sometimes better means starting over from scratch. That weekend, my parents drove up to see my new place. My mother walked through the tiny apartment, and I braced myself for disappointment. Instead, she smiled. It's perfect, honey. It's you. We ordered Chinese food and sat on my new couch, and my father asked the question I knew was coming. Are you okay? Really? I thought about lying. But I was done with lies. I'm getting there. Some days are hard. But I should have done this 2 years ago. My mother squeezed my hand. I wish I'd pushed harder. I knew something was wrong. I shook my head. I wouldn't have listened. I needed to figure it out myself. And that was true. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd end my marriage by publicly exposing Trevor's crimes, I'd never have believed it. I'd have defended him, made excuses, convinced myself things would get better. Growth isn't pretty. Sometimes it's explosive and messy and leaves debris everywhere. Monday morning, I got an email from an unknown address. No subject line. Just a link to a news article. Local businessman under investigation for embezzlement. My hands shook as I read it. Preston had gone to the police. Trevor was facing criminal charges. His name, his face, everything was public now. The golden boy of the Vaughn family was a criminal. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. But there was also something else. Something that whispered in the back of my mind as I closed the article and went to teach my class. Relief. Because for 3 years, I'd believed the problem was me. That I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. Now everyone could see the truth. Trevor was the problem. He'd always been the problem. And I'd finally stopped accepting blame for someone else's cruelty. That realization was worth everything. Every uncomfortable conversation, every awkward moment, every bridge I'd burned. At lunch, Rochelle called. Have you seen the news? I had. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Free, I said. And I meant it. 3 weeks after the news broke about Trevor's embezzlement, life started to settle into a new rhythm. I'd wake up in my small apartment, make coffee in my second-hand coffee maker, and actually enjoy the silence. No one to criticize my breakfast choices. No one to make passive-aggressive comments about my work schedule. Just me, my thoughts, and the sound of birds outside my window. It felt like learning to breathe again after years of holding my breath. Work became my sanctuary. My students didn't care about society scandals or family drama. They cared about whether they got recess after lunch and if I'd read them another chapter of the book we were working through. 10-year-olds are honest in a way adults forget how to be. When Mia said my new haircut looked pretty, she meant it. When Carson said he liked when I smiled more, it wasn't manipulation. It was observation. I was smiling more. I hadn't realized how rarely I'd smiled before. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Deirdre said Trevor's lawyer was advising him to settle quickly, before the criminal charges made everything messier. He's desperate, she told me over coffee one afternoon. His father fired him from the company. His mother isn't taking his calls. The trust fund is frozen pending investigation. He's losing everything, and he knows you hold cards he can't beat. Good. Let him feel powerless for once. Let him understand what it's like when your life crumbles and no one catches you. But then something unexpected happened. I got a letter. Not from Trevor or his lawyers. From his mother, Vivian. It arrived at my apartment on a Tuesday, expensive cream stationery with her monogrammed initials. My first instinct was to throw it away unopened. But curiosity won. I sat on my couch and read it. Dear Ivy, I owe you an apology I can never fully give. For 3 years, I watched my son diminish you, and I participated. I told myself it was harmless family teasing. I was wrong. You deserved better. From all of us. The letter went on. She talked about how she'd built her entire identity around her children's success, how Trevor's failures felt like her failures, how she'd enabled his worst behaviors because acknowledging them meant acknowledging her own shortcomings as a mother. It was honest in a way I'd never expected from Vivian Vaughn. The last paragraph made my throat tight. You showed more courage in one night than I've shown in my entire life. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were never the problem. You were always enough. We were too blind to see it. I read that letter 3 times. Cried through the second reading. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to write back, to accept the apology, to believe people could change. But another part, the part that still had scars from those Sunday dinners, wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. Not throwing it away, but not responding either. Just acknowledging it existed and moving on. The criminal case against Trevor was building. Preston had given investigators everything. Forensic accountants were tearing through years of records. Deirdre said it looked like Trevor might actually face jail time. Embezzlement at this scale from a family business, with clear intent to deceive, the prosecutor is taking it seriously. I tried to imagine Trevor in prison. Couldn't. He was too polished, too entitled. But maybe that was the point. Maybe consequences didn't care about your last name or your expensive suits. One evening, I ran into Nash at the grocery store. We both froze in the cereal aisle, awkward and uncertain. He spoke first. Ivy. Hi. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He looked tired, older than his 31 years. I wanted to say, he paused, struggling. I'm sorry. For everything. You didn't deserve how we treated you. It wasn't Vivian's eloquent letter. But it was something. Thank you, I said simply. We stood there for another moment, then he walked away. Small moments of accountability, like tiny stitches on a massive wound. My friendship with Rochelle deepened. She'd been there through all of it, never judging, always supporting. One Saturday, we went shopping for new clothes. You need outfits that make you feel like yourself, she said, steering me away from the conservative, expensive brands Trevor had always pushed me toward. We bought colorful dresses, comfortable jeans, soft sweaters. Clothes that felt like me. That night, looking at myself in the mirror in a bright blue dress, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked alive. Happy. Free. Dating wasn't even on my radar. I was too raw, too busy rediscovering who I was without Trevor's voice in my head. But I did start saying yes to social things I'd avoided. Book clubs with other teachers. Trivia nights at the local bar. A pottery class that Rochelle dragged me to where I made the ugliest bowl in the history of ceramics. I laughed at myself, covered in clay, and realized I hadn't cared about being perfect. That alone felt revolutionary. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday in March. I sat in Deirdre's office while she explained the settlement. I got half of our joint assets, which wasn't much since Trevor had spent most of his legitimate money. But I also got something more valuable. Complete financial independence from him and his family. No alimony, no ongoing connection. Clean break. When I signed the final papers, my hand didn't shake at all. Deirdre smiled. How does it feel to be officially single? I thought about it. Like I can finally start living. Trevor tried to contact me one last time the day after the divorce was final. He showed up at my school, waiting in the parking lot. My principal saw him first and called me. There's someone here to see you. I can call security if you need. I looked out the window and saw him leaning against a car I didn't recognize. His expensive one had probably been seized. He looked diminished. Smaller somehow. I'll talk to him, I said. But stay close. She nodded. I walked out into the parking lot, keeping distance between us. What do you want, Trevor? He looked terrible. Eyes bloodshot, suit wrinkled, hair uncombed. I wanted to explain. I crossed my arms. Explain what? The stealing? The lying? The 3 years of emotional abuse. He flinched at that last one. It wasn't abuse. I never hit you. That's what abusers always say. You didn't have to. You destroyed me in other ways. You and your family made me feel worthless every single day. I loved you, he said, and it sounded desperate. Then you had a twisted way of showing it. I turned to go back inside. He called after me. I'm going to prison, Ivy. 2 to 5 years. My lawyer says it's the best deal he could get. I stopped but didn't turn around. Good. Maybe you'll learn something. I could feel him staring at my back. Do you hate me? That question made me pause. Did I? I'd thought I did. But standing there, I realized hate required too much energy, too much focus on him. No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I just don't care about you anymore. That was the last time I saw Trevor Vaughn. He went to prison 3 months later. I didn't attend the sentencing. Didn't follow the news coverage. Didn't ask Preston or anyone else how he was doing. He'd taken enough of my time, my energy, my life. I wasn't giving him anything more. Not even my anger. That's real freedom. Not when you forgive. Forgiveness is complicated and optional. But when you simply don't care anymore. When their story isn't your story. When you've moved on so completely that they're just a character in a past chapter you rarely think about. Summer came, and with it, real healing. I spent my days off reading in the park, having long dinners with my parents, teaching a summer enrichment program for kids who needed extra support. Simple things. Quiet things. Things that filled me up instead of draining me. Rochelle said I looked different. Lighter, she said. Like someone turned on a light inside you. Maybe someone had. Or maybe I'd just finally stopped letting other people turn it off. Either way, I was becoming someone I actually liked. Someone I'd maybe always been underneath all the criticism and cruelty. Just me. Ivy. Not Trevor's wife. Not the Vaughn family's punching bag. Just me. And that was enough. That was always enough. But there was still one thing I hadn't done. One person I hadn't talked to. And as summer faded into early fall, I knew I needed to face it. Not for closure. I'd learned closure was overrated. but for something else. Something I couldn't quite name yet. Something that would either finally set me free or pull me back into a past I'd worked so hard to escape. And that terrified me more than anything else had. Because this time, there was no folder full of evidence. No dramatic confrontation. Just me and a conversation I'd been avoiding for months. One that might change everything. Again. The coffee shop was crowded when I walked in that September afternoon, scanning faces until I found her. Vivian Vaughn sat in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She saw me and stood halfway, uncertain, like she wasn't sure if I'd actually show up. I almost hadn't. Almost deleted her email asking to meet. But something pulled me here anyway. Ivy. Thank you for coming. Her voice cracked on my name. I slid into the booth across from her, not saying anything yet. Up close, she looked older. Gray roots showing in her perfectly styled hair. No makeup. This wasn't the Vivian who'd spent 3 years tearing me down over Sunday dinners. This was someone else. Someone broken. I wasn't sure I would, I said honestly. She nodded, stirring her tea even though it didn't need stirring. I've been going to therapy. My husband insisted after everything with Trevor. I waited. Let her fill the silence. The therapist asked me to write down every cruel thing I'd said to you. Every joke I'd laughed at. Every time I made you feel small. Her eyes filled with tears. It took me 4 sessions to finish the list. 4 sessions, Ivy. Do you understand how many times that is? My throat felt tight. I did understand. I'd lived every single one of those moments. Why did you do it? The question came out softer than I meant it to. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Because you weren't afraid of me. Because my son loved you more than he loved impressing me. Because you were real in a way none of us knew how to be anymore. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I was jealous of you. A scared old woman jealous of a kind young teacher. How pathetic is that? I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her she was right, it was pathetic. Part of me just felt sad. For her. For me. For all the years we'd wasted on this toxic dance. Your apology letter meant something, I said finally. I wasn't ready to respond. But it meant something. She reached across the table like she might take my hand, then thought better of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth. Trevor learned his cruelty from somewhere. From me. From his father. From a family that valued success over kindness. We sat there for a while, 2 women who'd hurt each other in different ways, trying to find some kind of peace. She told me about how Preston had moved out, how Claudia wasn't speaking to her, how Nash was the only one who still called. How the house felt empty and cold and exactly like what it was, a monument to appearances that had finally crumbled. I'm selling it, she said. Moving to a smaller place. Starting over. Just like I had. Maybe we weren't so different after all. When I left the coffee shop, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Vivian had been cruel because hurt people. That didn't excuse what she'd done. But it explained it. And explanation, I was learning, was sometimes enough. Sometimes you didn't need to forgive. You just needed to understand and then walk away. That was its own kind of freedom. The kind that doesn't require the other person to earn anything from you. You just release it and move on. That night, I called my mother. Told her about the meeting. She listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me. You're braver than I ever was, honey. I would have avoided that conversation forever. Maybe that was true. But bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about being scared and doing the thing anyway. About facing uncomfortable truths because growth lives in discomfort. I was learning that. Finally learning that. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more true stories like this one. Your support means everything to our channel family. The next week, something unexpected happened. Preston called me. Not texted. Called. Ivy, I have a proposition for you. I almost hung up. But curiosity won. I'm listening. He cleared his throat. The company is restructuring. I need people I can trust. People with integrity. I'd like to offer you a position in our community outreach department. Good salary, benefits, using your teaching background to develop education programs. I was stunned silent. You want to hire me? His laugh was dry. You're the only person in this whole mess who told the truth when it mattered. Yes, I want to hire you. I should have said no immediately. Should have kept that distance. But the salary he mentioned was double what I made teaching. And the work, developing after-school programs for underprivileged kids, was exactly the kind of thing I dreamed about doing. Can I think about it? I asked. Take all the time you need, Preston said. The offer stands. When I hung up, my mind was spinning. Was this some kind of trap? Some way to pull me back into their world? Or was it genuinely an opportunity? I didn't know. And that uncertainty kept me up all night. I turned down Preston's job offer. Sent him a polite email explaining that while I appreciated the opportunity, I needed to stay focused on my own path. Teaching was where I belonged. He wrote back immediately. I understand. The offer remains open if you change your mind. You taught this family more than you know. I read that email 3 times, then archived it and moved on. Some doors are meant to stay closed even when people try to reopen them. October brought cooler weather and a new student to my class. His name was Felix, and he reminded me of myself at that age. Quiet. Watchful. Trying hard to be invisible. His intake forms said he'd just moved to the area after his parents' divorce. My heart ached for him. I knew that particular kind of pain. The kind that makes you shrink. So I made sure to call on him gently, to smile at him in the hallways, to let him know he was seen. Small kindnesses. The kind no one had shown me when I needed them most. One afternoon, Felix stayed after class. Ms. Ivy, can I ask you something? I nodded, organizing papers on my desk. How do you stop feeling sad all the time? The question hit me like a truck. I sat down, looked at this small boy with big eyes, and told him the truth. You don't stop feeling sad. You just learn to feel other things too. Happy things. Little by little. Until the sad gets smaller. He thought about that. Does it work? I smiled. Yeah, Felix. It works. I promise. That conversation stayed with me for days. Because it was true. The sadness over my marriage, over those lost years, had gotten smaller. Not gone. Just smaller. Manageable. I could carry it now without it crushing me. That was healing. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to hold it without breaking. I wished someone had explained that to me years ago. That healing wasn't linear or pretty or fast. That some days you'd feel fine and others you'd cry in your car. And both were okay. Rochelle started dating someone. A graphic designer named Marcus who made her laugh in a way I'd never seen before. Watching them together, I felt something I didn't expect. Not jealousy. Happiness. Pure happiness for my friend who'd supported me through everything. And maybe a tiny spark of hope that someday I might find that too. Not soon. I wasn't ready. But someday. The possibility existed. That was enough. November came with Thanksgiving approaching. My first Thanksgiving in 4 years that wouldn't involve the Vaughn family. My parents invited me to their house, and I said yes without hesitation. My mother made all my favorite foods. My father told terrible jokes. We watched football and fell asleep on the couch. It was perfect. Simple and warm and full of people who actually loved me. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Safe. Not like walking through a minefield. The weekend after Thanksgiving, I was at the grocery store when I saw Claudia. She was with a man I didn't recognize, laughing about something. She saw me and went silent. We stood there in the frozen food aisle, all the history between us hanging heavy. Then she did something that shocked me. She walked over. Ivy. Hi. Her voice was careful. Hi, Claudia. The man with her looked confused. This is my fiancée, Aaron. Aaron, this is Ivy. She used to be married to my brother. Used to be. Past tense. That felt significant. Aaron shook my hand, friendly and oblivious. Nice to meet you. Claudia shifted her weight. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I hesitated, then nodded. Aaron wandered toward the ice cream. Claudia looked at her shoes. I was horrible to you. I knew it then, and I know it now. I don't have an excuse except that I was following Mom's lead and trying to prove I belonged in this family that valued all the wrong things. She looked up. I'm sorry. Really sorry. 2 apologies in 2 months. The universe had a sense of irony. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Not because the apology fixed anything, but because it was honest. Claudia bit her lip. For what it's worth, watching you stand up to Trevor, to all of us, it changed something in me. Made me realize I didn't want to be that person anymore. The mean girl who tears people down to feel important. She gestured to Aaron. He's nothing like our family. Blue-collar kind, doesn't care about status. And he makes me want to be better. We talked for a few more minutes. Nothing deep. Just surface pleasantries. But it was something. A tiny bridge being built over a massive canyon. When I left the store, I felt lighter. Not because I'd forgiven everyone, but because I was learning that people could change. Not always. Not even usually. But sometimes. And sometimes was worth acknowledging. Growth wasn't just for me. Other people could do it too. Even people who'd hurt me. Are you enjoying Ivy's journey? If this story is resonating with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Your engagement helps us bring more real stories to life. December arrived with holiday decorations and end-of-year chaos at school. My students were excited about winter break, bouncing off the walls with energy. Felix had come out of his shell, making friends, smiling more. One day he gave me a drawing he'd made. It showed 2 people standing under a rainbow. That's you and me, he said. Because you made things better. I kept that drawing in my desk drawer. Looked at it on hard days. Reminded myself that kindness mattered. That even when everything else falls apart, the small good things we do ripple outward in ways we can't always see. Christmas Eve, I was wrapping presents at my apartment when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Rochelle was with Marcus's family. My parents were coming tomorrow. I looked through the peephole and froze. Nash Vaughn stood in the hallway holding a small package. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home. But he'd probably heard my footsteps. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Nash. This is unexpected. He looked uncomfortable, which was fair. I know. I'm sorry for just showing up. I tried calling but figured you blocked my number. I had. What do you want? He held out the package. This is yours. I found it in Mom's attic when she was packing to move. It's from your wedding. Figured you might want it. I took it carefully. Through the paper, I could feel a picture frame. Thanks. You could have mailed it. He nodded. I could have. But I wanted to apologize in person. Not in a grocery store aisle. Properly. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Okay. I'm listening. Nash took a breath. Trevor was my brother, and I loved him. But he was wrong. We all were. The way we treated you was inexcusable. I told myself we were just joking around, being a normal family. But normal families don't make someone feel worthless. I knew it was wrong, and I did nothing. I'm ashamed of that. His voice cracked on the last word. Real emotion. Not performance. I've spent the last 6 months in therapy trying to figure out why I went along with it. Why I let Mom and Trevor and Claudia tear you down without ever defending you. He looked at me. I think I was scared. Scared that if I broke ranks, if I said something was wrong, I'd be next. I'd become the target. So I stayed silent and complicit. And I'm sorry. You deserved so much better. We stood there in the doorway, cold air seeping in from the hallway. I thought about telling him it was fine, that I accepted his apology. But that felt like letting him off too easy. Your silence hurt almost as much as their cruelty, I said quietly. Because there were moments when I'd look at you and think maybe someone sees what's happening. Maybe someone will say something. And you never did. Nash's eyes were wet. I know. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I believed him. You can tell when someone's truly sorry. It's in their voice, their body language, the way they don't make excuses. Thank you for coming here, I said finally. For saying this. It matters. He nodded. Are you doing okay? Really? That question surprised me. Yeah. I actually am. Better than I've been in years. He smiled, sad but genuine. Good. You deserve that. He left, and I closed the door, standing there holding the package. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a photo from my wedding day. Me in that dress I hadn't chosen, smiling at the camera, looking young and hopeful and naive. I'd thought I looked happy in this picture. But now, years later, I could see the tension around my eyes. The forced quality of the smile. I'd been performing even then. Playing the role of happy bride while already feeling the first cracks forming. I almost threw the picture away. Then I changed my mind. Put it in a drawer with Vivian's letter and other remnants of that life. Not to torture myself. Just to remember. To have proof of how far I'd come. Christmas Day with my parents was exactly what I needed. Low-key, full of love, no expectations. We ate too much, watched old movies, and my mother didn't ask once about my love life or when I'd start dating again. That restraint was its own gift. Around 8 that night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped, thinking it might be Trevor somehow. But it wasn't. Hi Ivy, this is Deirdre Morrison. Merry Christmas. Quick update, Trevor's appeal was denied. He'll serve the full sentence. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at that text for a long time. 2 to 5 years. He'd serve all of it. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt empty. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like I'd imagined it would. It didn't undo the pain or give me back those lost years. It was just a fact. Trevor was in prison. I was free. And we'd never be connected again. That was enough. I texted Deirdre back. Thanks for letting me know. Hope you have a good holiday. Simple. Clean. Done. New Year's Eve, Rochelle threw a party. Small, just close friends, but I almost didn't go. Parties still made me anxious. Crowds, small talk, the pressure to seem happy. But Rochelle had been there for everything. So I went. Wore a red dress I'd bought for myself. Did my makeup the way I liked it, not the way Trevor had preferred. Showed up with a bottle of wine and determination to have a good time. And I did. I actually did. At midnight, when everyone was hugging and cheering, I stepped out onto Rochelle's balcony. The city stretched out below, lights twinkling, full of possibility. A new year. A new decade of my life starting. I thought about who I'd been 12 months ago. Still married, still miserable, still believing I was the problem. I'd come so far. Survived things I didn't think I could survive. And I was still standing. Still here. Still fighting. That was something to be proud of. That was everything. Marcus found me on the balcony. Hey, you okay? I smiled at him. Yeah. Just thinking. He leaned against the railing beside me. Rochelle told me some of your story. Not everything, just enough. You're brave, you know that. I shook my head. I'm not brave. I just didn't have a choice. He disagreed. Everyone has a choice. You chose yourself. That's the bravest thing there is. Maybe he was right. Maybe choosing yourself when everyone else expects you to stay small is an act of courage. I'd never thought of it that way. We went back inside, and I danced with Rochelle and laughed with people who actually liked me. Not because I was performing or pretending. Just because I was me. And me was enough. When I got home that night, I stood in my small apartment and looked around. This wasn't where I'd planned to be at 30. Single, divorced, starting over. But it was real. It was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt grateful. Not for what I'd been through, but for who I'd become because of it. January brought a surprise. Preston called again. But this time, it wasn't about a job. Ivy, I wanted you to know something before you hear it from someone else. My heart raced. Okay. He cleared his throat. Trevor's filing for early release. Good behavior, some program he completed. His lawyer thinks he might get out in 18 months instead of the full sentence. I felt sick. That's less than 2 years total. Preston's voice was heavy. I know. I'm sorry. I tried to fight it, but the system is what it is. After we hung up, I sat on my couch processing. Trevor might be out in 18 months. Back in the world. Free to rebuild his life while I was still rebuilding mine. It felt wrong. Unfair. But life wasn't fair. I'd learned that the hard way. The question wasn't whether it was fair. The question was what I'd do with the information. How I'd let it affect me. Or more importantly, how I wouldn't let it affect me. Because Trevor's timeline wasn't my timeline anymore. His life wasn't my life. He was a stranger now. Nothing more. I called Rochelle. Told her everything. She was quiet for a minute, then said, "Do you feel unsafe?" I thought about it. No. He never hurt me physically. And I don't think he will. He's not that kind of dangerous. She pressed. But emotionally? That was harder to answer. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm stronger now. I'm not who I was when I left him. Rochelle made me promise to tell someone if Trevor tried to contact me when he got out. To have a plan. To protect myself. I promised. Because she was right. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. February was Felix's birthday. He invited the whole class to a party at a roller skating rink. I wasn't required to go, but I did. Watched him skate with his new friends, laughing, being a kid. His mom came up to me during cake. I don't know what you did, but Felix is a different child than he was in September. Thank you. I told her I didn't do anything special. Just saw him. Made sure he knew he mattered. She teared up. That's everything. That's what he needed. It hit me then. Sometimes the biggest impact we make is just by showing up consistently with kindness. Not grand gestures. Just steady, quiet love. Spring came slowly. Warmer days, flowers blooming, that feeling of renewal in the air. I started going to yoga classes. Nothing intense. Just gentle stretching and breathing and learning to be present in my body again. For years, I'd lived entirely in my head. Overthinking everything, trying to control the uncontrollable. Yoga taught me to just be. To exist without analyzing. It was harder than it sounded. But worth it. Every week, I got a little better at quieting the noise. In April, I got an email that changed everything. From a woman named Helena who worked for a non-profit focused on domestic abuse survivors. Dear Ivy, your story was featured in a local news segment about emotional abuse and financial crime. I know that probably wasn't easy. But your bravery in speaking up has inspired many women to leave their own difficult situations. Would you be interested in speaking to some of our support groups? Sharing your experience. I read that email 5 times. My first instinct was no. Absolutely not. My story was private. Mine. I didn't want to be some poster child for surviving abuse. But then I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. Trapped. Miserable. Thinking she was crazy, too sensitive, the problem. What would it have meant to hear from someone who'd been there? Who'd survived? Who'd come out the other side? It would have meant everything. So I said yes. Not for me. For the version of me who'd needed to hear that story. For all the women who needed it now. The first support group I spoke to was small. 10 women, various ages, all with that same haunted look I remembered from my own mirror. I told them my story. The shaming, the isolation, the moment I decided enough was enough. How leaving was terrifying and necessary. How healing wasn't linear. How some days I still struggled, but I'd never regretted walking away. When I finished, a young woman raised her hand. How did you know you were strong enough to leave? I smiled. I didn't. I left anyway. And then I figured out I'd been strong enough all along. We talked for 2 hours. They asked questions, shared their own stories, cried together, laughed together. By the end, I felt connected to these strangers in a way I hadn't felt connected to anyone in years. We were warriors, survivors, women who'd been through fire and came out changed but not destroyed. Walking to my car afterward, I felt something I hadn't expected. Purpose. Like maybe all the pain had been for something. Maybe my mess could be someone else's message. That thought made everything feel less pointless. Helena asked me to speak to more groups. I said yes. Started doing it monthly, then twice a month. Each session was different but the same. Different faces, same pain. Same questions. Same desperate hope for something better. I told them all the same thing. You deserve better. You're not crazy. Your feelings are valid. Leave when you can. Rebuild slowly. Trust the process. And slowly, I watched them believe it. Watched them stand a little taller. Make plans. Take steps. It was the most fulfilling work I'd ever done. Even more than teaching. Because I was teaching them something school never could. How to value themselves. It was a Tuesday in late May when I ran into Trevor. I was leaving the grocery store, arms full of bags, not paying attention. He was walking in. We nearly collided. Both froze. He looked different. Prison had changed him. He was thinner, harder somehow. Gray at the temples. But it was definitely him. My ex-husband. The man who'd spent years making me feel small. Standing 3 feet away in a grocery store parking lot. Ivy. His voice was rough. I couldn't speak. All the words I'd practiced, all the things I thought I'd say if I ever saw him again, evaporated. I just stood there, holding grocery bags, staring. He looked at his shoes. I'm out. Early release. Good behavior. I found my voice. I heard that might happen. Silence stretched between us. Awkward. Heavy. Finally, he spoke again. I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. The apology I'd waited years to hear. And now that I had it, it felt hollow. Meaningless. Too late. Yes. I did deserve better. He looked up, something like hope in his eyes. Do you think, could we maybe talk sometime? Get coffee? That almost made me laugh. No, Trevor. We couldn't. The hope died. I've changed, Ivy. Prison changed me. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be better. I shifted the grocery bags to my other arm. That's great. I'm happy you're working on yourself. But it has nothing to do with me anymore. He looked like I'd slapped him. We were married for 3 years. Past tense. He heard it too. Were. Past tense. That life is over. I've moved on. You should too. I started walking to my car. He followed a few steps. I still love you. I turned back. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The woman who stayed quiet and took your abuse and made you feel powerful. That woman doesn't exist anymore. She never really did. So whatever you think you love, it's not me. I got in my car, put the bags in the passenger seat, and locked the doors. Trevor stood in the parking lot, watching. I started the engine and drove away. Didn't look in the rearview mirror. Didn't cry. Didn't feel anything except a strange calm. I'd seen him. Faced the monster. And he wasn't a monster anymore. Just a broken man who'd ruined his own life. And I didn't hate him. Didn't love him. Didn't feel anything at all. That indifference was more powerful than any revenge could have been. That night, I called my mother. Told her what happened. She was quiet, then asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Free. Really, truly free. Because I realized something today. He can't hurt me anymore. Not with words, not with memories, not with anything. I'm beyond his reach now. My mother's voice was proud. You've come so far, honey. I'm so proud of who you've become. I was too. Proud of the woman who'd fought back, who'd refused to stay small, who'd rebuilt her entire life from nothing. Summer came with long days and warm nights. I kept teaching, kept speaking to support groups, kept building a life I actually wanted. Started dating someone. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and easy conversation. His name was Owen, and he was a social worker. Kind, patient, interested in my story without trying to fix me. It was refreshing, different. I wasn't ready for anything serious, and he understood that. We took things slow. And slow felt right. One evening in July, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset, when Rochelle texted. Dinner tomorrow? Got news. The news was an engagement ring. Marcus had proposed. She was glowing, happier than I'd ever seen her. Will you be my maid of honor? She asked. I said yes without hesitation. This time, I'd be at a wedding that celebrated real love. The kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down. The kind that's safe and warm and honest. The kind I'd once thought I had but never did. Autumn rolled around again. A full year since I'd walked out of that family dinner. Since I'd burned my old life down and started building a new one. I took myself to dinner on the anniversary. Sat alone at a nice restaurant, ordered wine, celebrated quietly. Toasted to the woman I'd been who'd found the courage to leave. Toasted to the woman I was becoming. Toasted to all the women still trapped who'd find their way out eventually. And toasted to the truth that saved my life. You teach people how to treat you. And I'd finally learned to teach them I deserved respect. The lesson I learned wasn't complicated. It was simple but profound. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. 4 years, I'd given Trevor and his family permission to diminish me. I'd accepted their version of who I was. Believed their lies. Swallowed their cruelty. But the moment I stopped consenting, stopped accepting, stopped believing, everything changed. Not because they changed. Because I did. I took back my power. And that power was mine all along. I'd just forgotten it was there. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a difficult situation? What gave you the strength to do it? Your stories inspire others who might be struggling right now. And please, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. We share real experiences from real people every week, and your support helps us continue this important work. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Today I'm happy. Not in some fairy tale way where everything's perfect, but in a real way. A way that includes hard days and doubts and moments when I still question myself. But overall, genuinely happy. I have work I love. Friends who support me. A family that never stopped believing in me. And most importantly, I have myself. The real me. Not some performance. Not some diminished version trying to please people who'd never be pleased. Just me. Flawed and strong and still healing. Still growing. Still learning. And that's enough. That's always been enough. I just needed to believe it. And now I do.